Welcome back to another Nerdly video. I am so excited about this new Gatekeeper update. I've been sort of easing my way into making more Gatekeeper content videos. I was going to do a Risk of Rain Returns videos today, but man, I had to talk about this latest update from Gatekeeper. This latest update dropped a few days ago, and it really just blew me out of the water. I had some expectations, but there were so many more quality of life and reworks that I was absolutely not expecting at all. There were a lot of things I think players early on in beta and during the full release wanted to see incorporated, but I think a lot of those got into this update. Now, there are still things I would like to see added in the game, and I'm hopeful of those are coming in the future, but with this update, I now have pretty high expectations from the team to deliver on some of those promises. First of all, the game looks even better than it did before. One of the things I mentioned in an earlier video was how polished this even early access game looked and felt. They really managed to, from the get-go, make a really good, solid, polished feeling game. And you know, the thing is, they managed to make that even better in this update. You'll notice some of the things like the edges are now blurred. If you try to look sort of to the top of the screen, you can't really see the enemies. As you move around the map, it sort of like warps around you to kind of load in. It's just a couple little aesthetic changes that make the game look even better somehow. I love this. I love the way it works and looks. And it seems like some of the enemies and characters sort of have more pronounced lines. They really put that little polish on the game that is very welcomed and very, very well done. It feels great to play. It feels great to look at. I just love what they've done with it. But see, the thing is the content is what we're here to talk about. There is so much content in this update. I'm going to try not to spend too much time here. There's some stuff we just have to talk about. Okay, so one of the things you were probably aware of is this sort of like a bazaar thing. You know, in Risk of Rain, in between stages, if you find the newt, you can kind of go to the bazaar to buy items, to go to the bathroom, to get you some more white cheddar popcorn if you need that. In Gatekeeper, this is called Quiet Bay on Delta. So at the end of every stage, once you go to the quorum or go to the next stage, you get transported to this middle stage called Quiet Bay on Delta. Again, this is essentially the bazaar. You can buy items here with the in-game currency, which I'll talk about in a minute. There are, I think, just one forge here where you can print into items you don't really want. And there's a little secret area that has a cursed item. Those are kind of similar to Lunars. So this is just a really great addition to kind of slow the game down a little bit. One of the things, what it was previously is you just sort of kept going. And if you were playing co-op, you just couldn't stop. So now this is kind of a good way to, again, get up, go to the bathroom, get a snack. So I mentioned this in-game current. And so this was part of the beta, and they took it out in the full game release, but now they've brought it back. When you kill enemies, you get these like little blue chips. There's also these sort of like blue orbs that you can destroy that spawn during the stages where you destroy them and you get this in-game currency. And so you use that currency to spend it on items in the Delta. Sometimes during the stages themselves, there's an altar where you can buy items using this currency, but it's primarily for the items on Delta. The only complaint I really have of all this Delta, the Quiet Bay, is that I kind of wish I could choose whether or not I wanted to go to the Delta stage. Sometimes, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit impatient and I just want to keep playing. So maybe in the future, if I was able to choose whether or not I wanted to go to Quiet Bay, that would kind of be nice. I also kind of think that the layout of this stage is sort of needlessly complicated to navigate. If you want the cursed item, you've got to go up and around and sort of like find it in this little secret area, and it takes kind of a minute to get there. If you want to go buy some items, those are in the middle of the map, but you have to go down and then you got to go up. And then if you want to leave the place, you got to go again down and kind of go to the bottom left of the map. It's not really fun to navigate, and it just kind of feels like a waste of time. So I feel like if they could just rework this and literally just make it like one place, everything is right there in front of you, kind of like how Risk of Rain does it, I think it would just make it a little bit better in terms of quality of life. But again, I love this addition of the Quiet Bay and sort of this break between stages that you can sort of kind of think. Maybe you can look at your items. You can kind of think about what you want to get. You can go to the bathroom, whatever. It gives you a little bit more control over your run, which was one of the big things I think a lot of people had problems with pretty much since the beta. So the next thing I've got to talk about here is they've added these things called triads. So I'm not going to talk through all of them here. You can see them on screen, but basically items are in sets now. So if you get 3 items as part of a triad, you get some kind of boost to either just general items in that category or just one of those items. So these boosts are so strong. So for example, y'all know that I love that argument item, the one where basically if anyone gets near you, it damages them over time, just sort of like passively. This in combination with Bad Mood, which gives you a 50% damage boost in a certain radius, is just a really good item synergy, and it's just really passive damage that's really great. These 2 items are in a triad now, with the 3rd item, which I've forgotten. But if you get all 3 of those items, you actually get a boost to the argument radius. And so it makes that item even better, which is I mean, phenomenal. They've added like 10 of these, I think. Another one I like is the on-hit stuff. Like, you know, I play Tech Hunter a lot. There's a triad called Triad of Carnage, and what it does is it increases the skirmish projectile bounces of enemies up to 10 times now. So now the thing is, there's an incentive to go and look for these items, you know, to get that 3rd item or that 2nd item to try to complete that triad when you're going up to an item altar to try to complete that and get that extra boost. This was something I really wasn't aware of, but I really like this idea. You know, the thing is, the game is much more difficult. This kind of gives you a little bit more strength to kind of deal with that increase in difficulty. There's just so much more to talk about, so I'm going to try to speed run through some of this. The stages, they're completely different. If you played the beta, if you played, you know, the game before like last week, none of the stages look the same. The themes are same, like, you know, one of them's lava, whatever, but they've been entirely reworked. They're like 3 or 4 times bigger. They're massive stage. You've got a little mini map as well. But the big thing here is that the increase in stage size also means you have to do more objectives to get through the stage. So before, where it was like, oh, you know, kill 60 enemies and then you can go to the next stage, or just charge a single totem. You know, now the way it works is you have a primary objective. And sometimes if you have to charge a totem, there's going to be 2 totems you have to charge. But also at the end of the stage, you have to always fight a boss. So that's a lot of stuff to do in a single stage. So what they've done is they've essentially, instead of going through like 13 stages of pretty minor objective, they've condensed it down to 4 stages, but you have a bunch of objectives on that stage. I remember people complained about the lack of enemies or how slow the game was. These larger stages bring with them a significant amount of more enemies. Stages are full of enemies all the time. You get lots of big item proc chains, explosions, bright lights. Dude, it's wonderful and hectic all the time. The only thing I kind of don't like about the stage size and enemy increase is it feels like there's way too many like small corridors or places to get trapped or body blocked by enemies just because of how many there are. I mean, there's a lot of like short doorways that feel like it's really easy to just get stuck there and you can die. I think either the stages need to be tweaked a little bit more to increase the size of these corridors, or maybe even like reduce the number of enemies on the map. So far from what I've played, I really love this increase of enemies, so I don't really want that to be the end. I would love to see maybe the maps sort of get reworked to make them a little bit larger, especially in those areas that feel a little bit more cramped. So next are the stage objectives themselves. There's this new objective called Chaos Wards. It's sort of similar to charging the totems, but there's 3 of them you have to do. The radius is really small. It charges really fast. But with each of these Chaos Wards, they have their own random modifier. So sometimes the enemies explode when you kill them. Sometimes there's like acid rain in the location. I think I've had one too where the enemies in that area actually, you know, get health regen. Super difficult, but there's a lot of variety here because you essentially have to just sit in this point and charge this teleporter. And of course, if you leave it, it like kind of decharges. So these objectives are really fun. They're really challenging. It can take a lot of time to complete, and it forces you to balance risk and reward to charge those areas. Again, there's like 10 modifiers. I'm not going to talk about all of them. You can pause here if you want to see those new modifiers. So the last couple things I want to talk about here, one of them is co-op. You know, I feel like this game is really fun in co-op. I don't know why, but whenever I've played this game in co-op, I've had such a good time. I think it is much better to play co-op in this game than Risk of Rain. And so now there's a way for you to resurrect your teammates mid-stage. I haven't tried this out, but you know, it's just another great way to kind of keep the game going, because what happens in Risk of Rain, right, is when one of your teammates dies, they essentially can't catch back up. So now you have a way in this game to kind of get your teammate back into the fight And so this is really, really welcomed, especially as the game has gotten significantly harder with this update. The next thing I wanted to talk about are conflict altars. This is a lot like the challenge shrine from Risk of Rain. You basically press this. I don't think you get any extra items or anything. I think it's just like maybe you push your XP a little bit more. If you want the game to be even more chaotic for some reason, I know there's an achievement for it, so you got to do it at least once to unlock those items. This is just something new you can do now, just a little bit more content on each stage to do. The last thing here I want to talk about are just kind of the general updates. And so one of the things is, you have to fight a siren after each stage. And after you kill that siren, you get a choice between, I think, 2 or 3 high rarity items. So it's kind of a reward for killing those sirens. There's 17 new achievements, and I think those correspond mostly to new items. And I think a lot of those achievements are like 1 item unlock, so it's not like they added like 40 items, but there are a good number of new items. I haven't seen all of them yet. I've unlocked a couple of them. And they seem really unique. I really think this game has done a really good job so far of creating some really interesting items. I've talked about them over these videos, and I just love kind of how unique they feel and how just good they are. There's not a lot of item fluff in here. Everything you get is useful, so it makes it really difficult to choose between items. Triads, the item sets kind of help with that, but now you kind of get even more items to pick from. It's funny, I just made a video about Tech Hunter, and I was talking about how great his passive item is, the one where you have a 3% chance for an enemy to drop an item if you kill them. And so now this has been reworked. I mean, so I guess I was right in how strong this was, because just, again, all the items are good. There's not really a lot of fluff. So now they've reworked it to where the items don't drop from the enemies, but you have to find a container somewhere on the map to get that item. Still very good. You just have to work a little bit harder to get that free item. All in all, dude, this is just an absolutely amazing update. Has a lot of rework, has a lot of new content. Dude, the team took a massive risk with reworking this much of the game in one patch, and I think they did it well. They reworked the game and added new content, and that's always a risk. Aside from a few tweaks, things like the map sort of corridors, or maybe choosing to go to the bazaar or not, like these are really minor things that are really not like core functional problems. I think the game is in a wonderful state. This new content, this new update, well worth the wait. I loved this game before this update, and now it just kind of pushed it a little bit further up that list. So much fun to play. It is so much more of a challenge, but in a good way, and you feel like there's enough balance and stuff added to make you stronger to keep up with those enemies. I think it's worth the try, especially if you already own the game. Go back, give it a shot, and see what you think about this update. Game's currently on sale for $12, and for $12, you can't really go wrong with something like this. So give it a shot. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.